Hi, welcome to this special edition of Life Changes with Filippo. I am your host, Filippo Voltaggio, and today we have a special interview with famous medium and Emmy-nominated TV host of The Afterlife, Suzane Northrop. And this is really exciting because normally when we see you, you're with large audiences and you're doing your work, and here we're in a little bit more intimate setting. Although, what could be more intimate than what you do? Yeah. You're talking about people's very most intimate experiences with people they truly love. Yeah. So this is intimate in a different way, I suppose. Yeah. And I have to add that I'm glad that we're actually, so far, knock on wood, able to film this. Yeah. Because it seems like everywhere you go, things just blow up. What is happening?
Well, first of all, dead people don't have bodies, just in case you haven't figured that out. And because they don't have body, they work on frequency, or a different frequency than we work on, you know, because we all know matter is dense. So because of that, what happens is it's a very high energy. Not only is that one of the ways that they make contact with us, but it's very common when you're doing any kind of, you know, things with machines that they will, and it happens in multi-million-dollar studios. So I tell people that it's like, if it happens there, you know it can happen anywhere. You know, radio, when you listen to a radio, it's constant. But if somebody goes off the air literally for like a minute, that's a long time of dead air. Yeah. I mean, no pun intended, right. Dead air. And that has happened in some of the studios that I've been in.
And it's because of the entities
around I have to gather it has to do with their energies. I mean, I think, honestly, I think it's a combination of their energies, but I also think they want you to know they're there. And what better way than, you know,
than blowing up the studio.
Right. Like the last time we did this, we had an entire show by cell phone.
Right. Thank you for reminding me. We literally did the whole show using our cell phones, yours and mine, and
and you said that that's never happened at the studio.
No, absolutely not, and it's
nor since,
and it wasn't comfortable. But yet, if you're telling me this, then it just is what it is, and you just go with it.
You learn to work with it.
You learn to work with it, like you learn to work with whatever's coming through.
Correct. Yes, I know that I've learned to work with that. But even within that, believe it or not, I have to be very conscientious of what comes out of my mouth, the way it's said, in terms of the responsibility of what I give that person. And, you know, you kind of have to, you know, have a cue from people. It's like there's some people that, you know, you can be stronger with them and, you know, be like, now wake up, you know who that is and I want you to listen. And other ones, when they're, you know, they're fragile. And you have to like really be able to kind of read the person, even though you're giving that information. So, you know, I'll give it as I get it, but I know that there's certain ways that you can say things and not say things. Like, for example, sometimes somebody will ask me if I know when someone's going to pass. Now, if I get that, I can't give it out. So I will have to say something like, you know, when was the last time you saw, you know, your parents, you know, whatever it was. I mean, this literally just happened to me. There was a gentleman I was doing a lecture at, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, last time I saw you, he said, my two aunts showed up. One showed up with the apron and one showed up with whatever it is. And he says, and I knew them both, and they're both really connected to me. He said, but they kept emphasizing me to go home. Now, he said, you know, both my parents are in their 80s. So I really felt like, okay, I was a little concerned, even though you didn't say anything. And he says, I went home, and that week my brother died.
Oh, wow. It wasn't even the answer. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it happened actually during our show that you asked somebody about somebody's father and asked him whether his father was here in the afterlife, because you knew that he was in transition, and we spoke about this afterwards. Because when the person let us know that within the week the father passed, we connected with you, and you said, right, I was seeing that, and I just wanted him to, I wasn't able to tell him, but I wanted him to know, maybe you should go see him or something.
Or that his dad was okay, and, you know, because there's always the questions, are they okay?
Right.
You know, that whole process. So.
Was there ever a time when you were not knowing the best way to let people know? I mean, I'm thinking of you as a child. Like, was there ever a time when you said, "Oh, this," but people weren't ready to hear?
Yeah, but I think when you're children, depending on what your circumstances are or your surroundings, you know, in terms of, you know, your background, I think it has an awful lot to do with how you deal with it. So in other words, I mean, I know people in my field that had very strict religious backgrounds. And not all of them, but a lot of them have had a lot of difficulty because of that. Because of the stigma, because you are supposed to do this or you're not supposed to do this. And they they often hold on to that. Because we know when we're children, we're like sponges. And we know that sometimes that stuff stays with us. I didn't have any of that. I was raised in a rural town, and I didn't have no strong religious stuff and no intellectual type parents. My parents were literally farmers, and so it was very, very different. And interesting enough, because of that, people that work with the land, they may not, quote unquote, have a sense of God, but they have a sense of God in a greater sense, which is, in the Bible, there's a time and there's a season for everything. Right. Well, you see spring, what happens after this dead of winter, and then you see the harvest. So that there's a cycle, and we have that in our natural lives. So, and there was a time that we didn't put people in institutions. They were at home when they were sick. We went through that process with them. We saw them, be ill and physically die and have their presence there. That's changed, obviously, radically.
So as a child, you were able to say anything you wanted, and people...
Well, yeah, I don't know if I to say anything I wanted, but I did. And, my mother didn't kind of look at me strange because of that. But there were things that, that were there was one situation that was extremely alarming to me. I lived right, where there were railroad tracks. And one day when I was coming home from school, I kept seeing this young guy that, I was raised around him. And I knew that he always used to jump the trains. And I just kept getting this really weird feeling. I mean, really weird feeling. And I got home that night.
What, jump the trains means jump on the train?
Yes.
Oh, and
yes.
While the train is moving?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a thing that they did in those,
Okay.
I hope they still don't do that. But, kids, can I tell you, kids do stuff like that.
Okay.
And I had this really weird feeling. And, sure enough, I got home. My mother says, "Oh, do you know what happened to Johnny Kiefer?" And I says, "No." And he goes, he got thrown onto the railroad tracks.
And you saw him. Did you?
I had a sense.
Oh, you had a sense.
I had a sense
of
of sickness in my stomach.
Oh, okay.
And literally saw the tracks and literally saw him.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I must have been seeing it almost sequentially at the same time it happened.
Oh, wow.
So.
Now it's interesting because you mentioned cultures and I imagine and religious background, a sense of what happens when we die, and yet. You're big in Mexico, where
yes.
there's a big sense of culture and a Catholic religion.
Yes.
So how does that fly in Mexico?
Well, it's interesting because Italian Catholics are different than Irish Catholics. Are also.
You're telling me.
I am telling you. Yes, that's why I can tell you. I mean, the Italian Catholics will go to church and then they'll go up the road to the gypsies and get their they do. It's natural. The Irish are a bit more proper, so they tend to have a bit more difficulty with what I do, just because I don't know what it is, but it's more intense for them, and I think maybe that's just a sort of a cultural thing or whatever. The Hispanic cultures, or particularly Mexico, the holiest day of the year is Dias de Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead, sure.
And when I was there, what was so amazing to me is I was doing all these unbelievable media shows. I mean, the top #1 television and radio and print work, and they were honored to be in my presence. And for me, it was extremely touching because, my God, I mean, that's what I want to do.
They see you for
They
who
see
you
me
are
for
and
what I
you do.
am, and there wasn't to prove me you can do it. There wasn't any of that. It was
Right.
I went in it's about love, and because they're, as you know, with Italians, the family thing is so strong with them that it didn't matter. I mean, it was interesting because, in Mexico City, you can get married. They have gay marriages there, which I never knew. And it was even if you did alternative stuff, when it came to the family thing, they all knew the songs. They all hung out together. It was just, for me, it was really, really quite wonderful, I have to say.
How great to get that confirmation.
Oh, it was just great. And I would do these shows, and you'd have these producers, because as you well know from the business, producers, they don't want to be in front of camera, certainly not doing what I do with me. And they would want somebody. So there was this one producer who said no, I'll do it. And he went on camera, and I don't think he expected to have happen what happened. And he kind of lost it. I mean, the tears and of course, the mascara. And
that's what I wrote on Facebook today. I said, I hope nobody comes in during our conversation because I don't want to cry on camera.
Yeah, because we had somebody show up with you last time, didn't we?
Right. So moving right along.
Yeah, moving right along. Yes.
There's nobody here.
We'll send
Pay
them
no
away.
attention to the
Behind the curtain.
right,
We don't want what's behind the curtain.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you talk about needing, or I don't know about needing, but having that confirmation. And I was thinking about that this morning as I was thinking about our interview today. You have a very strong personality. And I wonder if some of that personality is the fact that you always had to prove that you do know what you're talking about, or that you really do see other beings.
I don't know if that has to do with why I have a strong personality.
Okay.
I've just got a strong
I was
personality.
curious about
But
that.
what I will tell you is this. Interesting enough, the contrary. I've never been into proving what I do. I really, because you can't, because it's only in the experience. It's like people for 5 million and thousands of years were trying to prove people about God. And we know they're not going anywhere. If they don't want to believe, they don't want to know, their God is whatever, Charleston Heston, whatever. But you're never going to prove anybody. You're just not. It's in your experience. Okay. So I'm not on any illusion that I'm going to be able to go in there and prove to you that I can talk to dead people. If you want to share in it with me, I love it. I mean, I'm all for it. But proving it, no, not going to happen.
Interesting.
So for me, I've never been interested in doing that. And interesting in a lot of ways, that has worked in my favor when I have gone into radio shows or TV shows where they're, like skeptical.
They're skeptical,
and,
sure.
And it's like I said, just let me do my thing. Let's just see what happens.
Right.
And, invariably, of course, there's always something that happens or always a person that shows up or whatever.
That's when you call your friends and say, okay, now blow up this studio. Now, just to...
Yeah, right.
I don't have to prove anything.
I don't have, right. So, yeah. Because, the bottom line is that, grief is such a personal issue. And with our grief are these, these two other big things, your fears and your beliefs. And they always tie in together. So because of that, if you have these intense fears or these intense beliefs, that you're not supposed to talk to them. Which, for me, when I think about it in like a grand picture, okay, that person physically died. Does that mean I stopped loving them? No. Does that mean they stopped loving me? No. So why would I not want to have that option to reconnect or connect or know they're well or them letting me know that? It's not a big deal. We're talking about somebody we love.
We're just not used to thinking of it this way. So that's why I'm glad you have the show and that we're doing this, because it helps us to think outside of the way the way we've been taught. Your strong personality, come to think of it, probably has helped you with the kind of groups that you've been working with, because you were the first woman to be recognized by the police because of the work you do with police.